Okay, welcome back everyone to another video. Today we're doing a very special video. This is something I've been working on for a really long time. Thank you everybody for the support on the last BoJack Horseman video. That was incredible. I just wanted to get that on and say that I loved the support and hearing all you guys' takes on everything. And I wanted to do something kind of similar and something I've been considering for a really long time. Red Dead Redemption 2 is my absolute favorite game of all time, and it's so story driven and there's so much to it. And I think it'd be cool to start a series where I review every single mission in Red Dead. So starting from the main missions, we'll move through all 6 chapters, then go to the epilogue, and then if that goes well too, we can move to side missions and stuff like that. But I'm gonna go ahead and start. Today we're reviewing chapter 1, the very beginning of the game, Coulter. So the first camp up in the snow. So the first mission is Outlaws from the West. It's, in my opinion, the perfect introduction to the story of Red Dead 2. It opens with an incredible atmospheric environment with a highly tense, desperate, and uncertain aura. We're first introduced to Dutch, the primary protagonist of the first game, and we piece together that the gang seems to be fleeing from a failed robbery in Blackwater, suffering heavy losses in the gang. We get our first look at Arthur Morgan, which I must say, him emerging from the snow in the lamplight is an incredible scene. He informs Dutch of an abandoned settlement ahead where they can stay for the time being. We come to know this later as Coulter. As they settle into camp, Davy Callender succumbs to his injuries that he sustained during the bank robbery. After that, Arthur and Dutch then go scouting for supplies and to look for Micah Bell and John Marston. John Marston being, of course, the protagonist of the first game. They soon encounter Micah and make their way to a homestead he has found. When they arrive, Micah and Arthur hide while Dutch attempts to reason with the people inside for supplies. The residents turn out to be a rival gang, the O'Driscolls, and this leads to a shootout between the two groups. Arthur then searches the house and barn for supplies. This introduces us to the looting mechanic. When Arthur enters the barn, he is ambushed by an O'Driscoll. They then engage in a brawl, introducing the CQC mechanics. When Arthur easily subdues the adversary, he interrogates him for any information possible, and he obtains the location of the current O'Driscoll hideout as well as the plans for a train robbery. Dutch then gives him his first real moral choice, to either kill him or set him free. Fun fact, if the player lets him go, he'll actually appear in a later mission in this same chapter, only to be killed. Arthur then takes a horse from the barn that he will use for the rest of the chapter, and Dutch and Arthur leave the barn. They hear commotion from the house and find Micah interrogating a woman. Amidst the quarrel, a lamp is knocked over and the house ignites. They then take the woman back to camp, with the house burning in the background in an incredible scene. The woman tells them they killed her husband and were keeping her hostage. She then tells them her name is Sadie Adler. The introduction to the gameplay is slow, simple, and satisfying. Brawling is done incredibly in my opinion, and it feels like it has weight behind it. It's well framed and effectively extremely entertaining. The horse riding mechanic, in my opinion, is difficult for first time players. It may feel clunky, and as if the horse has a delayed response. And the tapping of the accelerate button can get annoying. However, navigating the horse I feel is supposed to be realistic, and I feel that it does that well. And in the context of the game, it works. Especially after mastering the feel of the horse, it eventually becomes fluid, just like that of a real horse. The exposition and introduction of characters is done well with a truly incredible and immersive atmosphere, with a very cinematic first cutscene that does not overstay its welcome, but effectively gives the player the vague understanding of what's going on, but also room to make up their own possibilities of what has happened. The characters are gritty and immediately pull you in and captivate you. Next mission in the chapter is Enter Pursued by a Memory. Many of the earlier missions and missions in the first chapter quickly and concisely solidify Arthur Morgan's relationship and dynamic with the rest of the gang. Again, playing this mission after Red Dead 1, we immediately recognize 2 familiar characters, Javier and John. In this mission, we are sent with Javier to find John after he goes missing while scouting ahead. Arthur and Javier track down John by finding his camp and following the tracks to John's dead horse in the snow. From there, they can track down John on the side of the cliff using the sound of his gunfire. We find out that John obtained his trademark scar in a fight with a pack of wolves in which he barely survived. I like how this mission establishes Arthur and John's dynamic. Despite John obviously being in danger, Arthur is somewhat aloof and masks his concern despite the fact that we can tell he cares. Arthur's nagging and joking immediately paints their relationship in a brotherly light. However, in hindsight, story-wise, I think there should have been a better origin for John's scar. Maybe tortured by a rival gang in an important plot shift, or something to that effect. However, I don't hate it, and it's a cool thing to see right away. It also plays into the desperation of the current situation, and is coherent with the environment. Gameplay-wise, it employs some of the crucial aspects of the controls, while not feeling too much of a tutorial. It introduces eating, jumping, and swapping saddled weapons. The actual combat with the wolves can once again be initially clunky for a new player, especially when combating for the first time on the horse. Overall, I find this mission to be very atmospheric and cinematic, while successfully integrating core mechanics. Next is the Aftermath of Genesis. This mission introduces the very basics of hunting and sneaking mechanics. However, it feels less seamless than the previous tutorials. While at camp, Arthur talks to Pearson, who is the camp cook and in charge of rations. The camp is in dire need of food, and Arthur and Charles decide to go hunting. During the mission, Charles teaches you how to track animals and sneak, as well as gives you a bow and shows you how to use it. We are also introduced to sewing items and animals on the horse. I find this mission can easily veer off course or become confusing, with little room for error, or the mission is immediately failed. It's very delicate and methodical, and for some may be frustrating. However, I appreciate the role this mission has in establishing and building Arthur's relationship with Charles, as well as their role in the gang. Arthur learns that Charles feels positively about the gang, and Charles gets extra insight into the gang itself, such as the feud with the O'Driscolls, and learns about Arthur's 20-year presence in the gang. It acts as a well-formed bonding experience between the characters, and portrays the respect they show for one another. Moving on to the gameplay, the hunting mechanics itself make sense in a game like this. Once mastered, it blends into the environment well. Yet, the fact that it can be clunky and frustrating at times makes this mission one of my lower rankings gameplay-wise. But the way this mission depicts Arthur and Charles as a person makes this one of my favorite missions narratively. And we also get Arthur's first crack at a joke, which I love. The mission Old Friends starts with the gang riding out to hit a hideout at Ewing Basin, where Dutch suspects that the O'Driscolls are hiding. Arthur is initially skeptical of a revenge mission, but Dutch reassures him that this will give them needed intel on hitting a planned train job by the rival gang. Arthur is given the carbine, repeater, and the lasso, and the gang sets off. We discover that the rivalry was sparked by the leader of the gang, Colm O'Driscoll, when he killed Dutch's lover, Annabelle. To get back at him, Dutch kills his brother. We are also introduced to Lenny Summers and reintroduced to Bill Williamson. This mission does an incredible job of setting up how many of the feudal combats will take place in the game. It teaches the main meat of the larger scale combat sections. The gang reaches a cliff edge overlooking the camp where the O'Driscolls are hiding out. They see Colm on his horse, shouting and hitting one of his men, who leaves on horseback in fear. Colm follows suit. Dutch decides to leave him for later and sneaks down to the camp with the gang to get food, supplies, and info. This mission is the first to give the choice to Arthur on how to go about engaging with the enemy. It's a small touch that makes little difference, but it's something I would rather have than not, and it lends a small bit of control to the player and how to strategize. After the gunfight itself, the gang searches for supplies in the camp. Dutch finds plans for the train robbery, and Arthur finds explosives. As the gang rides back to camp, the fleeing O'Driscoll seen earlier is spotted by Arthur. He chases after him and apprehends him using the lasso. This introduces the hogtie and lasso mechanic, which is slightly different compared to the other weapon usage. Arthur takes the O'Driscoll back to camp, and we find out his name is Kieran Duffy. When Arthur returns, Kieran Duffy is taken to be tied up, and we are also reintroduced to Uncle. I love this mission, especially for its gameplay and level design. I enjoy being able to scout out from a higher position, and when a level has a lot of depth and height. The player is able to plan their attack and get an idea of how the fight will be executed. This is especially important for the first fight like this one. I also enjoy that the gunfight takes place in the E-Wing abandoned mining facility. It's a very dynamic environment that is fun to traverse and make your way through, with plenty of spots for the player to use the environment to their advantage. I like how the fight itself pushes the O'Driscolls back into the woods as you drive them out. Gameplay is much of the core gameplay of the game in this mission. Many find it to be unsatisfying or unfun, but in my opinion, I love it and I feel it suits the game well. Of course it isn't perfect, and there are much better executed TPSs, such as Max Payne 3, but I myself enjoy it, and of course it's entirely up to personal opinion. It's quite similar to GTA 5 shooting mechanics as well. Overall, this mission does great in having the player jump into some of the core combat of the game. It also gives us insight into the O'Driscoll gang and Dutch's past. Who the hell is Leviticus Cornwall? In this mission, the gang executes the train robbery stolen from the O'Driscolls. The gang rides out to a location where they can mount explosives to blow the tracks and stop the train. However, when Bill pushes the plunger, the explosives fail to go off, causing the gang to run after the train and jump onto its roof from the elevation in which they were stationed. Only Arthur and Lenny make the jump. Arthur and Lenny shoot their way through the train, killing all the guards aboard on the way to stop the train. Once the train comes to a halt, the rest of the gang catches up and eliminates the rest of the guards. Fun fact, this is one of the only times you'll see Micah use the long arm in the game, as he's usually using his trademark dual revolvers. And anyways, they find a train car, presumably with bonds inside, in which the guards have locked themselves in. Dutch attempts to persuade them to open the door, but the attempt fails, and so they resort to using dynamite to open the door. Lenny, Micah, and Arthur go inside to look for the bonds. Arthur eventually finds them, and once outside, Dutch lets Arthur decide whether to spare or kill the passengers. This choice will change your honor, and is the first mission in the game to do so. The gameplay in this mission is the first of the game to happen on a train, obviously. No shit. I like the initial running from the car to car, and how cinematic the scene of pulling up Lenny is. You get a good opportunity to use both range and melee combat. One downside of this train mission is how cramped it can be. Many of the cars are enclosed with multiple enemies, and so it can be quite difficult to kill them effectively and smoothly. Also, Lenny can die quite easily, but I love the transition from train cars to the side of the mountain. It's seamless and well executed. While this mission doesn't add much to the overall development of the story, the train combat sequences to me are awesome, and we get a better feel for the gang dynamic. Okay, that's gonna about do it for this video, guys. I'm gonna leave Eastward Bound off the list because it's literally just like you driving the wagon, and it gives some good dialogue and stuff like that, and I do like that mission. And you get to see the Native Americans, and you get a little interaction with them and a little bit of Charles lore, so that's pretty cool. But other than that, there isn't really much to talk about, so I'm going to be leaving that off the list. If you guys like this and you want to see more, and it's a series that a lot of people seem interested in, then I'll definitely do more. It's make sure you guys are subscribed, so that you can be up to date when it comes out. I'll probably be also doing more. I've been busy lately, but I'm trying my best to do more comic reviews. I had a comic review that I had to scrap the video for because the audio was scuffed. And then I'm working on animated TV show analysis, which is exciting too. So smash like, share with your friends and stuff. Help me out. Thank you.